Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black in, again. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So reach one, and teach one. This is not necessarily a message of war to you, gentlemen, but it's going to sound like one to ladies that listen if they don't know what we're talking about, if they only see things from the standpoint of their gender. Because I'm telling you to not take accountability for being non-select. Now, I'm still listening to MOT and his panel in which they pretty much said, we're not taking you with us. And they're talking about the Pookies and the F-boys, and they're talking about no good men. I'm still listening, so I admit that there are things said that I don't yet know, but what I'm getting at here is that I'm not telling you that being select means you can't come with black folks if we decide we're going to start something else. We're going to either start a new community or restart the existing ones, probably start a new one. What I am saying is that if you think that being a low-life nigger somehow makes you better than those who never were, I'm 100% with them in that. Now, the reason for the debate is because we don't all agree on the Malcolm X standard. The Malcolm X standard of reforming that's something that we can't argue with because it worked for him. Malcolm X, when he became an ex-Pookie, he was against the Pookieism. This is known and understood. He left them behind. The function of the ex-Pookie, when I say ex-Pookie, I don't just mean somebody from the hood, I mean an outright thug, a low-life knucklehead ass nigga. The ex-Pookie, the ex-thug, the ex-lowlife has a job to do, and that is to oppose what he used to be. So that means he extends the call for those who are still like that to get up out of the muck, and if they insist on staying there and holding other people back, he's at war with them. That's his job. If he's not willing to go that far, he's not ready. We can agree on that standard. And that's actually more so than Malcolm, because Malcolm said, here's this rope, now take it. What I'm saying is nowadays, the ex-Pookies need to say, here's this rope, come take it. Or hell, even if I can't throw you a rope, walk your ass out that mess. And if not, nigga, you holding us back with the robberies and selling stuff and selling the illegal things that are addictive and all of that, you holding us back, we're going to blow your brains out. We catch you, nigga, you gone. Now that I got that out the way, I'm going to go ahead and address why I'm recording this. First, gentlemen, let me tell you something about what is called a beta male, the so-called beta male. Having been both selected and unselected in my own youth, and it being based only on violence and other men's fear or respect, black men's fear or respect, I know something about the contrast and the transition between being selected and unselected. I'll tell you one thing about so-called beta males, and it is always based on something that they don't know or don't control or both. So-called unselected, it's always based on something that they don't know or don't control or both, for every single one. Men do not say, I'm going to be beta in the eyes of those that use that term, and I'm going to be unselected in the eyes of the opposite gender. However you want to conflate the two or separate them, men don't make these decisions. The formula is that simple. A man may choose to take a moral high road, but a man does not knowingly choose to be disrespected once, let alone repeatedly. And a man, especially of whom we think of when we say or hear the word beta in the first place, or even unselected, doesn't choose to remain with a woman that he knows does not really want him. If I tell you that only a beta actually doesn't want to be with a woman that doesn't want him, I'd be lying. The truth is that it is especially those men that we think of as fitting that stereotypical definition as the one that most wants her to be happy with or without him. He's the last guy that wants her to stay if she don't want him. If she cheats and he's the one that takes her back, it's only because she's saying that either she isn't doing it, so he doesn't know that she's doing it, or she says she's done cheating and that she still actually prefers him. So he thinks he's still staying with someone that prefers him. That's the only reason that these men stick around. Because nice guys know what it's like to be blamed for things they didn't do growing up. They don't assume the worst about other people, especially about women. So this makes them easier to deceive through no fault of their own. I, like others, was blamed for things I never did, and for years I couldn't tell the difference between other people's warnings about other people and just rumors that black folk love to spread about each other. So if you came to me and you said so-and-so X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't know if this was rumor or if it was true. I couldn't tell the difference for years because I knew I was blamed for things I didn't do and I didn't know where these things came from. I even recently had a nightmare about it as a grown man. And this is heavy in our community. So I know how angering it is to be blamed for things you didn't do. And I know how not just I, but anyone would feel when they're blamed for it. So guys who experience this tend to identify with women that are accused without proof or at least some kind of strong evidence. When I began to listen to rumors about women and avoid talking to the women in those rumors, I was going against my training and instinct. But like most men like me would not do so at a young age without evidence. I began to listen because I asked myself one question. Would she seem to feel me if the rumors weren't going around about her? Because evidence was that the answer was always no. And I decided to listen to the rumors because I understood there's no reason why any guy, including me, should be limited only to those about whom others talked bad. I'm not that guy. You can't dump on me like that. I'll drop you like a bad habit if I find out that you only wanted me because of someone else you couldn't get, short of a celebrity, really. Even a non-rich famous guy that you really want should be at your side if you can get him. And if you can't, you better not tell me about it if you want to keep me. But again, this goes against the training that I had. So simply put, though, becoming what is referred to as a beta male is as simple as not being able to read her mind and sometimes not being able to read the minds of the guys that she wants, especially the minds of the guys that the attractive women want or the minds of the attractive women, and then being judged harshly for not having these mind-reading abilities, judged harshly vocally and in front of other women. That's all it takes, and then before you know it, your reputation is sealed. Even if the judgment is pronounced in your absence, which often it is, and you weren't able to defend yourself, and if it was pronounced in your presence, you'd still be interrupted in the course of saying, no, actually, you got that wrong. So the next thing to happen is that the ladies who hear this are going to just respond accordingly. So the ones that never knew you, they're also going to decide, oh, must be beta. So if they can get a man about whom they haven't heard this judgment, the same one that will call you shallow for using that kind of reputation to decide for yourself if she's going to be with you, is the same one that will choose the man about whom there's been no such judgment over a man they've heard any woman criticize, no matter how unreasonable the lady or her criticism. Beta males aren't men who understand women's interest or nature or nurture and then turn around and still let anybody walk over them. No, these men exist, but they're rare. Men who simply are deceived into sticking around or just don't know what she's doing behind his back. Those are just guys that just don't really know. We men really don't know in many cases what these few men know. See, men who simply are deceived into sticking around when the men she wants would have long since bounced are plenty, but they're deceived because we men can't figure this out unless someone tells us. So if most of us don't know what the few men know and the few men they want are willing to share, and they know these. See, being labeled a beta male or being treated as such by ladies who don't think in those terms can be as simple as being 5'8" among ladies that only want you to be 5'10" and nothing shorter. Many women really can't tell the difference between an inch of height above or below their own. But if she learns it, she will insist on trading you in for another. So you can become beta for no reason other than that. You can become beta because she tells other girls beforehand she's going to ditch you for the one that's taller. They hear her say this before she tells you anything, and so the rest of them then see you as beta. So remember that when they not only like you, but think other women would too, you're not beta in their eyes, simply meaning you're not an unselected catch. Now, I know that, we're wanted to think that they have their own preference, and they may really think they do, but also notice that when one likes you and is with you, she doesn't notice. Notice that if she likes you and she's with you, and she doesn't notice that other women don't, or she can't imagine that they don't, also want you. Look how she treats you. Notice that if she's with you, she prefers you when she's with you. She cannot imagine. She can't prefer you without jealousy. Notice that. If she's really feeling you, she's jealous. She thinks somebody else is also trying to get your attention because they can't conceive of there not being competition for what they want. Because even on a subconscious level, they can't conceive of their preferences being different. They'll say that they are, but in reality, they can't. My mother to this day trusts my dad around other women. She doesn't trust the other women around my dad. Now they're in their 70s. When she realizes other women don't want the same man she's with, I don't know how often she leaves that man. When I say she in this sentence, I don't mean my mom, but what I mean is that whenever a lady realizes that other women don't want the same man she's with, I don't know how often she leaves that man, but many of us listening are sure we would bet money that increases the chances. I'd venture that among those my age and under, they leave about 90% of the time. But I confess, this is just a guess. I hope to be wrong, and I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and the depth of my black mind, but I doubt it. But see, even a lesser percentage of that time would only mean that I was less right, and this would take some kind of study to prove or disprove. An essential tenet of what I'm saying is still valid. Whatever you want to call what is referred to as the beta male, he is formed by worse than a simple lack of knowledge, but the outright deception. And this deception is participated in by the majority of Western ladies that discuss relationships in the first place with each other. Most men get a combination of lies and no answers at all in their attempts to learn anything about what she really wants. It's too easy for any man to become exactly what she doesn't want because she and the rest of them are busy telling us as little boys exactly what they don't want, as though it's what they want. And of course, what they don't want is for men to be willing to be what they want, but for us to just be that way in spite of what they say. So the paradox of it is that you have to just naturally be that way without knowing it's what they want. Hell, you got to naturally be that way while thinking it's what they don't want, and they don't feel anything is wrong with that kind of deception. So gentlemen, if you know what they want, and I mean the very things they want and won't tell you outright, and you still take back the cheaters and the disrespectful ones, then yeah, you're a simp, clearly. It can't be debated as to if you are one in the case that you don't understand. It can be debated then. You don't understand. You don't know what they won't tell you. But believe what I will tell you next. Whatever you consider yourself in her eyes, or whatever they consider you that isn't flattering, is because you were taught as a young guy, maybe even as a boy, that frankly you and your genitalia were worthless by default because it's external. And that by extension, even your love is worthless by default. Your mind and your money are not. Your mind is only worthwhile as a way to get to your money. That's why we were all shocked when we first saw, whatever age that was, when you first saw that the ones that were attractive were chasing the boys that did the opposite of what we were told we had to do to get someone just, half as attractive. We didn't understand because we actually saw that women do not pursue even men they want first. We saw that they don't. Then we saw them pursue the men they said they don't want. Whatever failure you met with temporarily, permanently, or off and on is because of what you were told and what you weren't told, just for you to become this failure. So they could extract from you without an exchange. And you wouldn't even protest the robbery. You aren't the beta, even if you think that term is applicable, or the failure, or the mark, or the target for resource extraction and paternity fraud because you're inferior. You're such because you've been deceived and kept ignorant, because that is financially and genetically beneficial to them if they can trick you into being that. You're such because you were told by TV, ladies in real life, and even by older men who fell forward a generation before you, that you're invaluable. Matter of fact, negatively valuable and even annoying, carrying this negative value so she could get without giving, and you would think it's your duty to give without getting. Lastly, I see where OJ covered the lady who said on her page in the video that nice guys are ugly, which is why they finished last. That it's not because they're nice, but it's because they're ugly, and therefore they're being nice to compensate for them being ugly. I know that's wrong. I'm not saying it's not true that a guy who is ugly to women has to try harder. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that being nice does tell many Westerners, and I use that term for a reason, that something about you is off. They may be used to nice guys being jerks from a young age. Okay, yeah. Nice looking guys being jerks from a young age. Maybe they get used to that. Whatever the case is, they're bound to know that every guy cannot behave according to looks, Unless, of course, they view themselves as behaving according to looks, and this is a projection. Still, I can promise you that being nice does count against you in the West, definitely, and I know this firsthand. As I said, growing up, they didn't even want me to know when they liked looking at me, especially the ones that were nice looking themselves. But since I didn't assume that I would look any kind of way, good or bad, to any new individual, they were often surprised by me not being arrogant and mean about it. Someone told me this, somebody from my hometown told me about this just a week and a half ago, that this was a big shock to them. I was equally as surprised to find out that they unanimously actually did have a favorable opinion, at least of the appearance. Not only did they start paying more attention when I started knuckling up, but the attention increased every time I had another fight. There were only two changes that took place. The first was fighting, and the second was their reaction and attention. And I mean specifically from the ones who had options to. There were no other changes. Same clothes, same car. But I was scrapping with porch monkeys as they saw themselves. And she responded favorably. What many of you don't understand is that I wasn't even flirting or spitting game. I was being flirted with first until I left for college. Now, I'm not special or unique, so I can't be the only one to experience this. There are bound to be others of you in the audience who experienced the same thing, or you saw your boys go through it if it didn't happen to you, or you even heard girls and women confess to this mess. Fact is that yes, while being an ugly guy might mean one has to try harder, being a nice guy automatically makes you uglier as far as many of them are concerned, and they're going to treat you. It is not only as simple as she said it in that video that O'Shea covered. They are conditioned to associate kindness with weakness, and weakness itself is ugly. So they will take a man's kindness as a sign that he's weak and therefore ugly to others, and they'll associate the kindness with social inferiority, genetic inferiority, and therefore sexual inexperience with other women. And they will obey the shallow concerns of a schoolgirl even in their adulthood, long after we men are forced to overcome any childish concerns that we might have with them. So it was pretty much all a setup for anybody that was normal to be considered something inferior and mediocre, under sub-mediocre, I should say. That's what you're facing. There's no other reason really why they're looking at so many of us and saying that we don't make the cut. There's nothing else. Now, granted, there are bad dudes, but those are the ones that have all the options. So we can't sit up and say that they're the ones that are really messing things up the way that, well, yeah, they are the ones messing things up, but we can't sit up here and say that we're the ones that are messing things up. And we can't sit up here and take the fall for what someone else does. You see, that's the myth surrounding Jesus, alayhi salam. They depicted him as the ultimate beta, as they call it. Not only innocent, but taking the fall for the guilty, just to give the guilty a shot at paradise, while hyper-judging the innocent for not being innocent enough, for not being sinless. It's insane, but in actuality, this was all a setup so that you could be labeled with something that doesn't, not only is it not applicable to you in many cases, it doesn't even exist to begin with, except rarely. And they took a rare type of guy and then turn around and applied that brush to most of you so that you would pay for the sins of the ones they want off the hook for their sins. That's all it was. A big illusion from jump. And I see why brothers call it the Matrix. I hope that one day this won't be true anymore. And in the meantime, I hope it helps. Assalamu alaikum.